Call our meeting to order, the work session of the Budget Committee. Welcome, everyone, and thank you to our directors who are joining us today. Our first order of business is committee business, so I'll turn to staff to see if there's any committee business.
Yeah, just a few things that I'll point out to everyone. Hopefully you received the email that told you about a time change for our meeting on Tuesday. So just starting 15 minutes later. So we are updating that agenda. You also have some materials in front of you just for your binder. So next week's agenda, any other materials that are relevant. And then I'll mention that we do have some beverages and snacks out for you in the area where the food was. And there's a visitor's badge sitting on the edge of the round table here. And there's one here on the table so that you can get out as you would like to out of either exit. And then finally, I'll just mention that we do have an overflow room that you don't need to worry about, but staff is hearing us too, or the public. If we did become crowded in these work sessions, it's the Bob Straub conference room on this floor where the meeting is being streamed as well. And sometimes the department staff will come there so as they get ready to come down for presentations. So I think that's all I have today.
Thank you. Any other committee business? Okay. I think first on our agenda is a legislative update on both state and federal with Director Adams. So I will turn it over to you.
Chairman Narcotti and members of the committee, thanks so much. I'm Steve Adams. I'm the Policy Director for County Government, and I'm here to move us through a bit of a state and federal update as is relevant to the process before you. I think just in kind of framing the challenges of making this presentation to you today, and it is kind of paramount to the task that you have. We're in a moment of great uncertainty with respect to what's happening at the federal and state level, and that will have material impacts for us here locally. So last week we concluded the 100th day of the President Trump's second term. We've had over 140 executive orders issued thus far, some fairly significant changes at the federal level, and we've had a fair piece of activity now within the Congress. We've got very narrow majorities on either side of the House and Senate, specifically working through the president's legislative agenda, and we're using the budget reconciliation process at the congressional level to do so. And I'll spend some more time on that. We're at a moment, and certainly you heard the county administrator's budget message, both contextually here, but also at the local government level, elsewhere around the state, around the nation, and certainly at the state level, where much of the funding that came during the pandemic and immediately after the pandemic have kind of washed through the system in a lot of ways. There's still some residual amounts of dollars that are coming through. But we're seeing a very different kind of federal and state level funding landscape associated with that. We are in a moment too of increasing forecasting challenges. We've had mixed numbers at the end of the first quarter. The president announced a trade framework earlier today with the Prime Minister of the UK, specifically a high-level framework for dealing with trade and tariffs issues. But we saw some challenges with GDP for the first quarter. We did see some good jobs numbers. All of this matters as the legislature will be receiving the final projection next Wednesday, the final revenue estimate for the upcoming biennial budget process. That's the number against which the legislature appropriates funds, and it's consequential. So much of that is going to be a projection of what they think is coming. So many neutral forecasters are increasing the likelihood that we will enter into. We may have already seen a technical recession with 1 quarter of negative growth on GDP. We may be in that second quarter now, and most folks are calling that now a 50-50 risk by the end of the calendar year, but we shall see. The congressional landscape now has been remarkable. I will say what I was planning to say this morning at 8 o'clock is now different than what I'm about to say in terms of the reconciliation process. But we have a congressional setting right now in which the current debt limit for Treasury expired on the 1st of January. So we are now in a period in which Treasury is using extraordinary measures to ensure that we can pay bills. There has been revenue coming in during the regular IRS tax collection time, so they're a little bit flush with cash. There's been some tariff revenue coming in. So who knows when the end of that is? Most folks are guessing in the August timeframe. We will need to make a congressional action to increase the debt limit, or we would be in default. We have this year the expiration of the 2017 tax package, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, without further congressional action. So this was this was the tax package, you'll recall, that was passed through the budget reconciliation process. That lowered limits right across the board. It simplified specific filing, so much of our deductions changed. We had a much larger standard deduction, you'll recall. So all of that goes away and we revert back to where we were in 2016 without specific action. Congress is currently working through the reconciliation process. So both houses passed the same budget resolution. And I'll just say there's a difference at the federal level between a budget and appropriation, and we'll say more about that, right? So the budget framework is what they passed. That gave specific assignments, and there was a couple of differences of opinion. The Senate initially wanted to do this in smaller pieces. The House proposed to do it in one large piece. The president weighed in, indicated he would really like to sign one beautiful bill, and so they are going with that now. And so they are marking that up. The other issue that is within the congressional milieu is what to do with the DOGE reduction. So we've specifically had a lot of reductions. The House Minority Appropriations Chair is saying we're seeing about $480 billion in funds that were appropriated by Congress but have been held back. That's whether or not that is at the point of an impoundment is yet to be determined. Is the money frozen or has it been terminated? Under current law, and the understanding of many, Congress would have to act to rescind those previously appropriated dollars. There is discussion within OMB as to whether or not the president is in fact able to basically impound dollars without congressional approval. We're likely to see Supreme Court be asked to weigh in on the Federal Impoundment Act of 1972 and whether or not that's a unconstitutional law. But nonetheless, Congress is in conversations with OMB on bringing rescission packages forward. So we don't know what the number is and we don't know what the sequencing is, but the first $10 billion package is being discussed right now. And this is a simple majority vote in the Senate side, right? So you just need a majority to do a rescission.
So we shall see. Some of this might actually be saved for the broader conversation that's happening with reconciliation. On the appropriation side, there's been a little bit more focus on that. On Friday, the president released what's called the skinny budget, just a very slimmed down set of recommendations. It was maybe something that you would not be surprised to see. It was recommendations for pretty remarkable levels of cuts in appropriations for a lot of agencies, specifically outside of defense and outside of Homeland Security. It reflects some of the work that the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency team, that has made much news and led by Elon Musk, has done. Now, and it's also, I would note that it was pretty typical during the first term, right, that we saw these very Spartan budgets coming forward from the Trump administration. So on the appropriation side for fiscal 26, you do have to get 60 votes on the Senate side, right? So the administration will have to work with the Democratic minority in the Senate to pass the bill. So you're going to have a Spartan bill coming out of the House side more likely than not for fiscal 26. And you're going to have a more of a bipartisan bill coming out on the Senate side, and then some degree of conferencing, and we'll see where we are. Of course, they need to pass appropriation bills by the end of the current fiscal year, which is specifically September 30, right, for the new fiscal year beginning. Or a passage of a continuing resolution, though I don't think there will be much appetite for that. We have seen congressionally directed spending continued on both sides, so we were pleased to see that. So these are colloquially known as earmarks or member projects specifically. We had a number in the fiscal 25 that died when Congress had to do a full year continuing resolution. So we're in the process of trying to add member projects back into the process. All right, so the explainer on the reconciliation process. So this is what everyone is focused on right now. The House came back from the Easter recess and began work specifically on the big beautiful bill. The way this process works is that the House and the Senate have to pass the same budget resolution. It's not sent to the president for signature, but it has to match. And if they pass the same budget resolution, then they go into a process called reconciliation that enables the passage of rather large sweeping legislation without the cloture process on the Senate side, right? So you don't have to get 60 votes. So you can get just a mere majority. So the reconciliation process has been used probably a dozen times in the last 25 years. The Affordable Care Act came through this process. The bipartisan infrastructure law a couple of years ago, or the Infrastructure Jobs and Act, and ARPA came through reconciliation during previous majorities specifically. So within the process of reconciliation, each of the committees with jurisdiction are given guidance to come back with changes in existing law that meet specific targets, either to spend more or to spend less specifically. And that gets rolled up into the bill, and that then moves through. So the lion's share of the work that this bill is intended to do is specifically to renew or to make permanent the 2017 tax package, right? That it is going to expire this year if Congress doesn't act. There's a desire to make that permanent moving forward. There were many points made throughout the campaign season and since the inaugural about what the president would like to see included. So no taxes on Social Security income, no taxes on tipped income, and other promises that have been made. That some of those are being scored at about $10 trillion if you were to add that up over a 10-year decade, a decade, to try to understand the budget impact. That's not likely to happen, given where we are. And so Congress is in the process of trying to report out. So this table on the right is specifically the scorekeeping for each of the committees of jurisdiction. The middle column is the instruction as to what they were supposed to come up with when they report back out. And you can see the progress column on the right. So some of the committees have been marking up bills and are hitting their marks. Some are, and you'll note that the areas where we're seeing new investments are in armed services and in homeland security. So these are administration priorities to invest in military capabilities more broadly, to invest specifically in border enhancements and immigration control activities. So you're seeing those investments there, and you're seeing reductions elsewhere to pay for what Ways and Means will ultimately do with the tax package specifically. So the Energy and Commerce Committee, oddly, is where Medicaid is. They have an instruction to come back with $880 billion. They're having a really hard time finding that. The president has indicated he does not support reducing specific benefits in Medicaid. And so there's a lot of activity to begin to think about what that looks like. There's increasing discussion, especially this morning, about what the bottom line tax package is that might have to come from $4.5 trillion down to $1.5 trillion. We might have to make some of the pieces not permanent. We might have to do specific tax provisions that have 2, 3, 4 year timelines on them, and hoping that future sessions of Congress would come back and fix that. So that's in flux right now. Energy and Commerce and Agriculture are slated to meet on Tuesday finally to mark up their bills, so we think we'll see bill text over the weekend for both of those. The agriculture conversation is significant for SNAP, is the biggest piece that we're thinking about, and that provides chair level is an acronym, SLEUTH, and that is Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. Is that right, SNAP? Yeah.
Public is thanking you and applauding online, I can see it.
There we go. Great job, Adams. All right. So that, of course, is nutrition assistance for our most limited income neighbors.
Formerly known as food stamps.
Thank you, Commissioner. There you are. So there's discussion this morning that might become cost shared with states. So that's where the rub is. We're looking very, very closely at these. So we'll see bill language. So I just want to point out, this is a tough legislative assignment for the staff who are working to try to get this through. The Speaker is working night and day. You've got members of the majority party on the House side, and all the action is on the House now. It'll go to the Senate eventually, but we're all on the House side now. So you've got members from blue states with high state and local taxes who are trying to get the state and local tax provisions, SALT. The current law says there's a $10 million cap. Sorry, thank you, $10,000 cap for your write-off, and they want to pop that up. You're seeing a lot of thoughts and differences of opinion about the degree of cuts that need to happen on the Medicaid side. You're seeing just a lot of fractiousness within the conference, and so they're having a challenge getting that piece through. So the goal here is to get this done and off the House floor and over to the Senate by the memorial recess is what the thought is. And so that's the timeline. The Senate then would come back, and it goes through some peculiar processes on the Senate side. So reconciliation has to go through a special set of tests. It's colloquially known as the Byrd bath. After Senator Byrd, there's a whole series of tests to see what's going to happen. And interestingly, you'll notice the debt limit increase differences on the Senate and the House side, and that's largely because of these arcane rules. And so the basic process here is essentially with the Senate treating existing law as not expiring this year, but rather being existing law moving forward. So that's the difference. And so the Senate parliamentarian is going to have to weigh in. They're going to get an opinion as to whether or not that meets these rules, and then the Senate's going to have to make some decisions about what this happens. Now, we're doing all of this at the same time that we're talking about the rescissions package, right? For many of these programs that were cut that are popular, even across the aisle, bipartisan programs. So think some of the FEMA programs that were recently cut and other grant projects, and that will be happening alongside. And there's the debt piece, right? There's the debt limit clock that's ticking. So the idea is to try to do all of this in one big grand bill. And to do it without bipartisan engagement. So the fact is that's what they're going to try to do, but it's a heavy lift. It's a really heavy lift. The last thing I want to point out, and this is a busy slide, is on the lower left, just the size of this thing. The thing that we're working on the lower left right now is in the neighborhood on the House side, depending upon a couple of other additional variables. It's well over $3 trillion. So this thing is like 8 times the size of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that passed back in '22. It's about twice the size of ARPA. So it just to give you a scale of how big this is and how much money we're really talking about over a decadal period of time. All right. Okay, so from Washington to Salem, and Salem, of course, is trying to do Salem things, focused on Oregon's best interest, taking on all of the necessary things that the Oregon legislature attends to every other year. And they're trying to set a 2-year budget, and they're trying to do it with the uncertainty of what's happening right now, specifically. The governor has been relentlessly focused going into this session, as she has on houselessness, housing production, mental health, and education. She continues to really focus on prioritizing funds. The governor in her budget instructions to agencies this year indicated that if you're not a priority, she wanted a 1% increase in overall, right? So 1% if you're not one of the priority agencies specifically, and anyone else is able to kind of make the case for additional resources. At the same time, the Oregon legislature is grappling with a transportations package. So we had the last package that the legislature worked on was in 2017. You probably have been following some of the fiscal challenges that the Oregon Department of Transportation has had. They have indicated that with existing resources and largely because of reductions in state and federal highway fund dollars coming in, so gas taxes, they don't have sufficient resources to fully deploy agency staff. So they're projecting, without specific action by the legislature, a net reduction of somewhere in the range of 9 to 950 FTE. So these are folk who patch potholes, these are folk who plow passes, that do routine activities on Oregon's transportation system. Obviously, not a good thing. We have seen a lot of relatively routine legislative activities moving through as the members of the legislature attend to the needs of the state of Oregon, but we're also seeing some influences really of the uncertainty that we're seeing at the federal level. And I think mostly we are seeing that in the budget side. So next Wednesday, as I said, is the revenue estimating, the final revenue estimation release, and this will be the set of numbers that Joint Ways and Means and the subcommittees will begin to use to move forward. I don't know, about a month ago, I think, or so, the co-chairs of Joint Ways and Means released their own framework. So you're seeing what their top line numbers are for the subcommittees in terms of how they want to roll money up. So you see a 7.4% increase in biennium on biennium in total, but you can do comparative line items and you can see some specific reductions. And so in this framework, we're actually seeing a $271.9 million reduction in the overall pieces here, as there's a recalibration of resources. And then on the bottom side, you're seeing a series of special purpose appropriations or SPAs that the Joint Ways and Means co-chairs are putting aside. That $100 million is a pot that the co-chairs are setting aside to cope specifically with changes at the federal level and how that may play out. And you'll recall that we do set 2-year budgets in Oregon at the state level, right? So there will need to be a lot of, there will likely be some flexibility needed and probably special sessions involved. Finally, the co-chairs, I think, really helpfully indicated here a couple of little bit of scenarios, and really just to try to focus the mind specifically on what potential scenarios could look like. Federal funds make up 32% of the state's overall budget, so changes at the federal level are material here. The co-chairs, after all of the tallies on the previous screen, came up with, and the special set-aside funds would have a net position here of $987 million in reserves to be able to address specific priorities, right? So this is what we would have that we could invest, assuming that there's no net change at the federal level. That's probably not a great assumption, but there you are. And the point of this is really just to demonstrate some of the major initiatives that the governor recommended in the governor's recommended budget are here, and you're just seeing what the difference is between those added up versus this reserve, right? So that means that Joint Ways and Means is going to be very parsimonious in the appropriations process going in, and I think rightly so. And then you see specific instances here of 10, 20, and 30% reductions at the federal level and what that then would look like specifically. And so those could come in the form of changes in Medicaid federal rules. Those could come in the form of supplemental nutrition assistance program changes, specifically if the state cost shares are there. That could come in the form of state transportation funding as well. That's a federal state grant and aid program. So going into the process, and certainly issues of primary importance for county government in the current session, securing capital funds of $14.5 million for our Behavioral Health Stabilization Center has been the board's top priority, and we continue to focus on that. We're focused, obviously, on many of the state level appropriations bills in which we have shared services. So that would be the Department of Corrections for our Community Corrections Act funds. That would be our Department of Transportation, the ODOT appropriation, whatever that transportation package looks like. That would also be areas within the OHA budget for our Health and Human Services, as well as our health and our ODHS. Having a hard time decoding acronyms in real time.
Oregon Department of Health Services?
Thank you. Human Services.
Human Services,
yeah. Which funds other
there's a
programs
few.
within Health and Human Services as well. So with that, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you for this excellent overview, Director Adams. Do we have any questions from committee members?
I'm still processing that one long sentence. Very good.
Basically, we don't know.
I know we have Commissioner Trieger tuning in online, and so Commissioner, we can't see you, so if you have a question, please do just chime in.
Now we're just.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure why you're not able to see me. I can see all of you and the slides and everything.
Pull the slide down.
If you can't see me, I'll turn my camera off and.
Oh,
the slide
can you
down.
pull the slide down to see if we can see Commissioner?
I think if we take the slides down, Commissioner, we'll see you. Oh, there you are.
Twice.
Yes, now we see you, twice.
There she.
Good day.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
No questions, I think. Thank you, Director Adams. This was great. So our next order of business is a presentation from Director Holmes, who I don't know. We are running
about
a
20
bit.
minutes early now. We'll see if they're right outside the door. So he's gonna check.
Need a picture deficiency.
Director Adams. We're ahead of schedule.
I could maybe have a question for you, Director, as we find Alana. The bill that's in the legislature that would fund property taxation, is there any update on that, or even just a brief overview you could provide?
I'm happy to, and while the tax assessor will poke me, I can't remember the bill number.
3518 maybe? Is it 3518?
I think that's right. So it is within House revenue as we speak, and we continue to believe that that is one of the committees that is not subject to the deadlines that many of the other committees are, and so that is continuing to make progress. There is a work session upcoming on the bill, and we believe we've got support to move that forward. So we remain cautiously optimistic.
Great, thank
And
you.
that will be a good bill. So the bill enables some additional enhancements state and locally to increase property tax assessment. So that will, it's not raising taxes, it's ensuring that we're fairly assessing the taxes that are due and able to collect them.
Do you have a sense of what that would mean locally in terms of FTE or funding?
We'll present that on
Oh, maybe,
Tuesday.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the assessor will be here on
Wait for the
Tuesday.
assessor.
She can give you a lot more.
There you go. And that's a far better source of information than mine. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'll also take advantage of this moment to just let some folks know later in the day, one of the reasons I'm remote is I'm also monitoring on another device, another one of our bills that's having a hearing that I'll be testifying. So if I suddenly drop off, it's because my name came up in the queue. I just wanted to comment of extra minutes, particularly on the farm bill, on the ag bill, and the threats to food stamps or SNAP benefits. Just how critical, and that's just one example of something that the reason we should care about that is because the people that we serve will be directly impacted, not that we administer those benefits or anything, but the scope of that is really significant. In Oregon, we have a much higher percentage usage rate than other states because we have high degrees of people in poverty and because we have good outreach programs, and the state funds for those programs from the feds are driven by usage. And in Oregon, it's almost 800,000 Oregonians that rely on those benefits, and more than half of them are children, families with children. And the other piece that often goes untalked about is, yes, there's a direct impact because people need those dollars to keep their families fed, but it will have a huge impact on local grocers because those spend like cash. Those to the grocer, those are the same as cash. So the economic benefit to the business that is the retail food industry would be very consequential in this state if there are significant cuts to that program.
Thank you. Well, with that, I think thank you, Director Adams, for this presentation, and we will transition to Director Holmes for a Human Resources presentation. So welcome, Director Holmes, and to your team as well.
Thank you as we get settled in.
Sure.
Yeah, should I have a clicker? Everybody ready? Let's get settled. All right. Greetings, Chair Marconte and Budget Committee members. My name is Alana Holmes. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer here at Lane County. And I just really want to thank you all for providing us with this opportunity to discuss our budget and kind of the process that we used this year and our impacts. I'd also like to quickly introduce the team that's here with me today, including Ryan McBride, our Talent Manager, James Trujillo, our Workforce Wellness Manager, Inga Wood is our labor relations manager, but she's taking some well-deserved time off. So Kristen is standing in her place, and she is our senior labor relations analyst. And then, of course, behind me, but critical to this process, is Lisa Lohndorf, our budget coordinator. All right. So, as you've heard, I think the other night it was laid out pretty well, the preparation for this year's budget cycle has been significantly different from previous years. We started this process back in October, which is at least 2 to 3 months earlier than we usually would. Our leadership team met several times during that time period. We were really working to look at a variety of options that would help provide those 5% and 10% reduction scenarios that we were asked to present by our county administrator. And we ultimately brought those to our county administrator and executive team to show them what those 2 scenarios would look like and have the opportunity to receive feedback from them from a customer perspective. So, we took that information back, and ultimately, between that and us continuing to be grounded in some of our core values, you have the presentation today. And just to let you know, our guiding kind of foundational piece as we went through this process was to minimize impacts in our HR staff to retain our talent. We're a really small department, and so whenever you eliminate FTE, right, there's a rippling effect, maybe more than in the larger departments. So the budget figures reflect cumulative impacts, including some proactive early actions, bringing HR's total close to a 4% overall reduction, including some things that occurred in Supplemental 3 of this year. So as you look at our resources, HR is funded by the general fund, and that is via indirect revenue from Lane County departments and some limited chargebacks to certain things like training that employees receive across the organization. The fund transfer is for one-time dollars for a limited duration position, and it's extending into next budget year, and you'll hear more about that as James presents on his division. Overall, we reduced our discretionary fund by almost 24%. And our proposed budget also contains the movement of a 0.5 FTE front desk position from our human resources to county administration, which will result in a decrease of $58,721 in discretionary general fund within human resources, and that same amount of an increase into county administration. In order to be proactive, we also made an early reduction of a senior classification and compensation analyst, and we moved it from a full-time position to a 0.8 FTE in anticipation of what we knew were upcoming budget challenges. That change is not reflected in the total that's on this slide. That's in addition to what's on this slide. So a little bit more details around our discretionary general fund. As you can see on the chart listed, our total reductions included salary and benefits, and additionally on the slide, the discretionary general fund shows our anticipated expenditures for M&S, which is material and supplies. So in addition to that, these reductions included the elimination of our extra help, and also significantly reduced our advertising that resides in Ryan's area. And then the partial reduction of the senior class comp position I mentioned, as well as the elimination of a full-time FTE, which is our HR leaves supervisor, which will be effective at the end of the calendar year. So we will see that reduction halfway through this upcoming budget cycle, right? And that position significantly supports employees on complex leave issues. So that senior leaves analyst is retiring in December, right? So that aligns well with the plan. And we have an opportunity to have a very thoughtful transition as we go through that. Part of that is our strong partnership with our third-party administrator, the Standard, who will be key during this time. The Standard is also introducing service level agreements to hold themselves accountable for the customer service our employees receive. And we are also being moved to a higher tier escalation team so that they can help us deal with those more complex leave issues that we do have. And what's really nice about, when did we make the switch to the standard? A year?
April 1st of 2023.
Of 2023 is when surveyed as far as experiences with the standard, employees have shown a 94% satisfaction rate, and that's really high, especially compared to the third-party administrators we've had in the past, right? That was one of our goals, is to provide a better experience. So the remaining 6% relates to those complex leave issues that I mentioned earlier, and certainly as we've added more layers of leave laws, it gets more complicated. So we'll be addressing those kinds of issues through that higher escalation team, and that's part of the plan. So as far as our expenditures, just like all county departments, we're facing increases in expenditures related to personnel costs, right? As you can see on the slide, we're dealing with increases from market adjustments for employees to increases in PERS, which is our public employee retirement system, and growing benefit costs. I mean, our county administrator talked a little bit about that, and you'll hear more from James. So all of those things people don't usually think about. Those are in addition to salary. People just think about, what's the salary, what's the job posted at, and they think that's what it costs. Well, that's just part of it. There's another huge component, and we call that total compensation, when you wrap in the benefits and PERS and other benefits that we provide as a very competitive employer in Lane County. So we are trying to really balance offering competitive wages and being really good stewards with the limited resources that we have. HR primarily has personnel expenses. You can see on the chart, right? Most of our costs are around our FTE. We do have some limited M&S as well as little to no capital expenses that we anticipate. And then as you can see on the slide, we have 4 divisions in HR, including HR admin, labor relations, talent management, and workforce wellness. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about his division.
Thanks, Alana. Talent Management Division consists of 3 core functional areas. That's talent acquisition, talent development, and talent resources. Our talent acquisition team provides recruitment, selection, hiring and onboarding support for departments, including targeted recruiting and passive candidate sourcing to attract the best and most qualified candidates to Lane County. Our talent development team provides individual and organizational training and development through programs such as our Emerging Leaders Program, Supervisor Manager Training Series, Crucial Conversations, and other in-person and hybrid learning opportunities. This team is also responsible for the administration and content curation of our online learning platform we call LEAP. Our talent resources team consists of our senior HR business partners and analysts who serve as a direct support link to department leadership and employees through consultation, investigating employee complaints and issues, navigating the ADA accommodation process, wage placement analysis for new hires, reviewing job classifications, and other just general HR support. So altogether, the Talent Management Division really has a consistent touch with all Lane County employees throughout the employment life cycle. And then Talent Management is focused our reductions on M&S in an effort to limit impacts to our employees. While we do not have any reductions to FTE, significant reductions in M&S will mean limited resources for our recruitment staff to reach prospective employees, as Alana mentioned earlier, as well as fewer development opportunities for our own staff. We also anticipate workload increases due to FTE reductions in other areas of the department. And with that, I will be followed by Christian Mayfair with Labor Relations.
Good afternoon. Labor Relations is made up of 4 employees representing 3.8 FTE. We are the unit that bargains the 8 collective bargaining agreements for the county with 6 unions and associations. Our focus is to use interest-based bargaining, which is a more collaborative approach, though some of our units have preferred to do traditional bargaining. But even within that, we take the interest-based approach, trying to make sure that we are completely transparent and providing as much information as possible for our employee groups to make informed decisions. We also advise on disciplinary matters, help through the grievance and arbitration processes. We also work on policy review and drafting for personnel matters. And we also ensure compliance with the state and federal laws in addition to our collective bargaining agreements. We also handle unemployment responses for the county and then partner with county council to provide training for managers and supervisors on managing employees within the law and those contracts, as well as best practices for corrective action processes. And Labor Relations is also responsible for classification and compensation, which includes making sure that we are compliant with Oregon's pay equity law. The most significant reduction that Alana has already mentioned is that 0.2 FTE, which was voluntary with our class and comp person. The impact that will have to our services is that it will cause delays in some of the service responses, as well as reduce the ability for that person to take on project work. Our other reductions in M&S are largely within the professional and consulting realm, which historically has been used to pay for mediation services with the State Employment Relations Board and other countywide services for labor matters that aren't directly related to one specific department. And then the other impact, just like with all of our other divisions, is on that training and development for our staff. And now I'll give it over to James in Workforce Wellness.
Thanks, Kristen. Good afternoon, everyone. The Workforce Wellness Division manages personnel transactions, employee safety, leaves, wellness, and benefit programs for the county. Of these areas, the most critical to the financial health of Lane County is the near $120 million portfolio of benefits serving our employees and their families, about 4,500 lives in total. As you heard from Steve Mokrahajski earlier this week, Lane County, about a decade ago, took several strategic and critical steps to control benefit costs. These included the implementation of the Employee Live Well Health Clinic, much needed medical plan design changes, and the introduction of the overall wellness program. The strategy they had was simple and proven. Healthy populations do not have as many claim costs, they're happier, and they can come to work. These changes helped control benefit costs for most of the last 10 years, but as Christine Moody noted, that in recent years our medical benefit costs have increased significantly. Now, nearly a decade later, after the original changes noted by Mr. Mokrahajski, it is time to make more changes. For example, we are working to help revitalize our programs. We have been working to analyze and update our wellness programming to help people stay healthy. We have gone out for competitive bids for high-cost programs to garner as much value at a competitive price as possible. We have analyzed and updated our benefit plan designs to introduce value-adding plans while reducing waste. And we're looking to close significant gaps in our benefit infrastructure, such as childcare, which is a major issue for all employers in Lane County. There's still much work to do, but our initial efforts are making a difference, which will become more apparent in this coming fiscal year. On this slide, you can see that we are eliminating one position from our division, reducing our materials and services budget, and adding a one-year limited duration position supporting benefits, wellness, childcare, and leaves administration. The elimination of the leave supervisor position aligns with the planned retirement, but it does disrupt a reorganization to realign resources to support benefits in particular. This loss will impact complex leave services provided and response times to employees, as well as require the distribution of required compliance tasks to remaining employees within the division, the HR department as a whole, and even supervisors in other departments. There is also the increased risk of leave errors cascading to payroll, which may create overpayments or underpayments to employees. The reduction to the M&S for our division will reduce staff development and training opportunities and limit our ability to invest in systems for automation. The extension of the limited duration position will allow us to maintain our wellness programming, administer benefits, complete 1 to 3 planned technology projects to improve efficiencies, and allow for support for leaves administration while we evaluate the overall staffing needs of the division. And with that, I will pass it back to
Thanks, James. So our 4th division is administration, which I'm a part of. We advise departments on a variety of workforce initiatives. We draft, implement, and interpret policies. We develop workforce data analytics and lead executive recruitments for the organization, including positions that report to the Board of County Commissioners. We also provide the general administration support for our department, so contracts and payroll and all of those kinds of things. My position staffs the Board of County Commissioners for any of their HR-related needs. And then we also consult on a variety of strategic and sometimes highly sensitive HR matters. We also work to facilitate an inclusive work environment so that all employees at Lane County can thrive. So really focusing on the culture of our workforce and the engagement of employees. Provide legislative guidance for our department and budget oversight. So the administrative division consists of 3 FTE, including myself, and our proposed budget has no FTE reductions. However, for the department overall, we have eliminated the funding for the extra help work, which has historically been utilized for administrative types work, special projects, our paid interns that we have, that's kind of wrapped up in the extra help. And then the reduction of our M&S is similar to everyone else's. It will impact flexibility for special projects where we sometimes have been able to tap into some consultants for some support as well as staff development. And then as you look to this next fiscal year, we're trying to just capture and garner some of the key initiatives that we're looking forward to. One is making use of current fiscal dollars now to engage a service provider who's going to digitize all of our personnel files. And I can tell you, we're really excited because this has been on our planning board for quite a few years. And then in the new fiscal year, our staff will work to organize these documents within our available systems and the resources we have. And that is going to create some efficiencies across our departments. We're excited to see what that is and what we can capture through those efficiencies. We will be refining our HR dashboards, including employee data, so that we can help better inform departments with their workforce decisions and any trends of information that they're looking for. We'll be reviewing the current performance management system, which most of us in the organization know as e-performance, for some process improvements and efficiencies. We will also be updating our APM, which is our Administrative Procedures Manual. We have ongoing opportunities for new policy development and also regular updates. But we also know, especially this year, we'll be likely to have to focus on certain sections of policies that may be affected by federal mandates. We'll be assessing our onboarding process, which we here at Lane County call NEO, or New Employee Orientation. It's been a few years, so it's time to kind of take a look at it and see what needs to be refreshed, as well as look for additional ways to improve our data collection, work and workflows to provide a framework for more automation. We see opportunities there. We'll continue the work with our benefits brokerage to identify ways to reduce benefit costs, which James has done a really great job in leading those efforts, and to continue focus negotiating the labor contracts to provide competitive wages and partner with units to help us in reducing benefit costs. And then finally, maybe at some point in next fiscal year, initiate planning for the recruitment of my position in anticipation of a potential upcoming retirement with a date yet to be determined. So that's in there, maybe. And then as we look to the future.
For the record, I object to the line.
Chair, I have a motion.
Italy is calling.
So, oh, yeah, there you go. Future challenges and opportunities, and my team laughs because I picked this up somewhere a long time ago, and I call these chopportunities, right? Because really, when you have challenges, it is a time to focus on what else can we do when we're really pressed and under the gun to figure things out. So, as James mentioned, we do know there are going to be service impacts and response times issues and slowdowns with the elimination of the lead supervisor. But we also recognize we may not know what all of those impacts are, right, until we're in it. So we will be, really monitoring what those impacts are, seeking customer service feedback, as well as within our own department, just to see if, where we might need to do some adjustment there. With the current federal changes and the potential for more executive orders and rulemaking, HR will need to remain poised and nimble to respond to any of the workforce impacts that result from all of those things. In recent years, our staff in James' division has processed more and more data transactions for a lot of reasons. We've seen a 25% increase to pre-COVID times. And so we partnered with TS to create some automation. However, we still have more work to do to address significant manual transactions that are approximately 10,000 manual transactions a year. So we have opportunity there. And when the county faces budget shortfalls, like what we're dealing with in this current fiscal year, it can cause layoffs and elimination of vacant positions. So there's a transactional workload as part of that we take on in processing those reductions to be very careful that we're in compliance with all of our labor agreements as well as our administrative procedures in how we're doing that work, as well as the processing through our information management system. So I would tell you that what we're going through this upcoming budget cycle, there isn't a division in HR that isn't a part of some part of the reduction in layoffs, not just the transactional piece, but also working with employees who are, receiving this news, working with their managers and supervisors who care about their employees and really, so it's not just transactional, there is that heartfelt care for the employees as well. In addition to that, our current technology is limited in the ability to kind of provide some of the improvements to processes without a significant investment of like both monetary resources, but also staff time, bandwidth, and that's not just with our area. And we also anticipate with the budget reductions that we're seeing, probably an increase in requests from departments for consultation on workforce planning, right? What are we going to do now as people settle in to what structures will be looking like going forward? And so as well as we try to navigate the changes that we'll be seeing coming from the state and federal level, which, we are seeing things in motion and we certainly aren't through with those things yet. So those are some of the things I wanted to share. And then, I wanted to close with this lovely picture of our incredible HR team. We worked really, really hard and take part in some really tough things. But we also have to take time and build our team together. So I wanted to close with that. And I would be remiss if I also didn't display great appreciation to Christine and the budget team for all that they do to support not just us, but everyone as we go through this process. And at this time, Chair, I'd like to turn it back over to you for you and the Budget Committee for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm leaning into a microphone that's not there. Thank you, Director Holmes and the whole team for this presentation. I think that was excellent. And I think a really important consideration in the opportunities, which I'm going to steal, around the impact of reductions on your team and sort of some of those considerations I think are really important to draw out. So thank you, and I'll turn it to the committee for any questions. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. It's always wonderful talking to you and your team, and Ryan and James, Kristen and Lisa. Wonderful work, great presentation. You know, you're talking about cuts and you're talking about impact on the services you provide. And you've listed administration, workforce wellness, talent acquisition, and labor relations. One thing that people look at is how long does it take to put somebody on the job from the time we know we need it to fill a position. And everybody here knows the tremendous stresses there are on hiring in a government agency these days. And the lead times are long, typically compared to, you know, hiring in a private industry. But the cuts, not too many cuts in the department. Can you describe, will there be any impact on lead times for filling positions?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, I don't anticipate that area being impacted. And ideally, we have opportunities as we work and consult with departments on the more projection and locking in of timeframes and people to support interview processes. Those lead times can vary greatly. It depends on how departments approach those components of the selection process. But we don't anticipate that group being impacted. It'll really just be on the passive candidate outreach through LinkedIn with the reduced advertising dollars. That's where we'll probably see more of the impact.
That's a great answer for me, and that's all I need at this point in time. And I'm going to turn to James real quickly. You said that the healthy populations do not have as many claims, are happier, and they can come to work. I love that quote. I'm going to use it. And what your work has been really impactful. You're talking about changes that we have made, positive changes you attribute to Steve, but I know Steve didn't do the work. But you're also talking about more changes, continually making making our benefits more accessible and broader for our employees, as well as keeping the costs down. It's been pretty remarkable, the work that you've done. I want to really herald you for that. But more than that, James raised a word that we're all thinking about here, and we all need to think about, and this is the early seed in the budget process, childcare. That's all I'm going to say. But that should be a recurring theme as we go through, because it is important to the people who work in Lane County, as you stated, and it's high on everybody's list as to how we can they come to work. Well, being healthy helps you come to work, but also having childcare helps you to come to work. We know that's important. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would echo James's just appreciation for James's leadership in the community and beyond with regard to childcare and looking at solutions for employees. So thank you for that, James. Other questions for the group? All right. Oh,
It's not a
Commissioner
question.
Sanders.
I just want to say, great presentation. It really helped me. We've been working together almost 3 years now, but you know, there's so much to your human resources department, and really that showed the depth of it. You know, human resources in the past, you and I have kind of talked about this, like, I gotta go to human resources.
Yes.
You and your staff have done a great job of turning that into a positive opportunity. So I just want to take that small chance and say thank you.
Chair, Commissioner Seneca, if I may, in response, thank you for that recognition. I think a lot of times people have an image of HR, especially if they don't interact more than starting, filling out their I-9s and applications, and making sure they get a paycheck and, you know, they don't interact. But there's it's like the iceberg, right? There's the things that people are familiar with, and then there's a ton that we do that people don't know about. One, because it's not part of their daily world, and why should they? But also, because a lot of the work we do is so confidential. And so, you know, we have to keep those pieces, you know, close to the vest. However, as to changing from an HR that people avoid, I mean, that work started 6 years ago as we reorganized and created the talent management group so that we could have an independent group from our labor relations group. So with the volume of work that they're doing, they have time to dedicate there. And that with talent management, really working with employees on their life cycle, feeling that they also have support by HR in a place to come for help, in addition to managers and supervisors in their work. So, you know, that work continues, and we're committed, again, to helping create an environment where all employees feel welcome, supported, and able to do their best work. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
all so
much.
much.
And We are about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, but why don't we go ahead and take a break? It's 2:33, so let's be back at 2:43.
Hey Herb, didn't say howdy on my way in. How you doing?
Good.
Old timer.
Yeah.
3. So I would like to welcome our team from County Administration.
But, you know, what's 3 months?
What's 3 months? You need to get
Starting.
Yeah, good job.
Stop yapping. She's starting.
Now that someone's given me this, every opportunity. Welcome back from the break, everyone. It is now 2:43, so I would love to welcome our team from County Administration, and I will turn the floor over to you all.
Thank you very much, Chair Marconte, Vice Chair Beans, and the Budget Committee. Judy Williams, I'm the Chief of Staff in Ripon County Administration. And today we have Mr. Blythe and Mr. Adams with me as well as the County Administrator, Assistant County Administrator, Budget Manager, the rest of County Admin here in the room too. That's it. Oh, yeah. Finance Manager Greg behind me as well. So I'm gonna walk you through a few slides about our whole department as a whole, and then I'm gonna dive into our division of county management, and then turn it over to Mr. Blake to talk about operations. So it's been a couple of years probably since county administration has presented at this budget committee. So I'll just kind of do a high level overview of kind of some of the key services that we provide, what we do, who we are, and then walk into the budget reductions, impacts, and so forth. So there's 3 divisions in our county administration department, and as a whole, we are 102.5 FTE. So the division on your left is county management with about 19 FTE, operations in the middle with the largest, and then policy division as well. And then the yellow coded programs that are listed here on the slide are really just to kind of highlight which services, which programs are central services. So while we do a mix of both central and direct services, you can kind of see in general which programs are made up of those. And it wasn't the budget committee without some slides and pie chart and talking about our resources and expenditures. So with 3 divisions, about 18 programs, our funding that we bring in is quite diverse as well. So from, kind of go around the clock here, there's we take in like marriage license, court fines, parking revenue, recording fees. In the federal revenue, we have listed the FEMA BRIC program, which is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, as well as EPA grant listed here. State revenue is quite a bit here as well, about $7 million in the policy division. And then in the green, you see the administrative charges. These are our kind of our indirects that other departments are paying into for these services. And then for expenditures, we have both personnel, material and services, as well as capital expenses. And so in terms of looking at a pie chart, the first one, in our current year, we are spending about $14 million. So you can see there's an increase to $15.2 million. Standard to what you've been hearing from the other presentations is cost of personnel increasing. The material and services is going up from about $16 million in the current year to about 23, and this is largely in professional consulting, again, services and costs going up, and agency payments, which are other partners that we work with. And then capital expenditures are going down, so we're about 27 million in the current year, but budgeting about 22 million. And so with this, it's we're looking at improvements, general construction going down, we're kind of spending down the last of the ARPA recovery program thank you, dollars. So you see that. I have a couple more slides about the department as a whole, and then I'll dive into our division. And I think you've heard a lot about this from both the county administrator in the budget message, as well as Alana Holmes in HR's presentation. And I think just to hit on the process, as I think it was a really good process that we took on as early as October to dive in and look at what we were looking at budgetarily. And I think it's important to highlight just because and I've been at the county about 21 years, and I think I've seen a lot of ups and downs, and I really appreciate when we have those opportunities when we're going into a hard, challenging budget year to have a collaborative, transparent process. And so just wanted to highlight the work that we all did to really come together, bring all ideas, first this brainstorm, bring all ideas to the table, knowing that any idea is a good idea, and just put it out there, and maybe somebody hasn't been thinking about that. I think too, just understanding the weight of the issue and how hard it is, and it's challenging during a budget reduction year for staff, for managers, for everybody, and just carrying that weight and knowing that we want to take extra special care with this. So as we're walking through the scale of those impacts, we really looked at impacts to users, impacts to costs, what are the risks if we do reduce something, and then had a really good opportunity with our management teams to walk through what did these look like, and really worked on those together, assessing kind of what's a low risk our low impact option, a medium impact option, and really talked through these and got creative. And it's a vulnerable time too, but it was a nice process to walk through as a group to get some thoughtful items on the table to discuss to reduce. And then feedback, as you've been hearing from the other departments and from the county administrator. So just, again, closing the loop on that process of hearing from departments that would be impacted by reduced services and just getting that feedback as we fine tune these reductions. So I'll walk through very briefly. I won't go into all detail because we'll each do that for each division. But this is a list of the services that we provide, and again, these are central services, general fund services. So these are the service option sheets or SOS forms that you all have. And so you're seeing this, and you'll be seeing it from all departments, to see the amount of reductions that we took for each of the service levels. And a lot of the reductions we'll go through in more depth as well, but this shows in the categories at the top are just by division, so the groupings here. As you see, these are the reductions, and then that final column is the total discretionary general fund that each of these service options are using for the proposed budget. And within these central services, there's also some direct service as well, so the justice courts, recording, research, marriage licenses, elections, and voting registration, as well as Mackenzie Fire and Recovery. So now I'll walk through our division of county management for a couple of slides and then turn it over. So this division, there are a mix of central services and direct services. So county administrator's office, there's about 7 FTE, and we really provide the leadership for the organization. Our county administrator, assistant county administrator. We do, it's kind of the hub for resident inquiries. We have access to the commissioners, as well as managing the Board of County Commissioner meetings and the processes there. We initiate a lot of countywide projects and initiatives such as the strategic plan, other actions such as helping to staff the Public Safety Task Force funding group. Our budget office, budget and financial planning, as you know, not only just prepares the budget process on an annual basis, but also a lot of other financial analysis, costing for countywide initiatives, research, as well as financial forecasts. Our equity program provides strategic focus and thought leadership throughout the organization and really guides everybody for equity work for Lane County throughout. Our justice courts, you didn't know, we have a justice courts in Florence, and that's our remaining justice courts, and it's a county court run that's looking at violations, misdemeanors, lane code violations such as parks, animal, but also takes in the state traffic tickets as well, and dunes tickets. Our law library is in the basement of this facility, and that has 2 FTE, and they staff the resource center there and provide targeted research for not only attorneys, but actually primarily from the general public. We get about 76% on an annual basis of just general public walk-ins, as we see a number of folks representing themselves. And then our public information office provides the awareness of programs, awareness of countywide initiatives, a lot of social media, and does a really great job communicating with businesses, leaders, our organization, internal and external. Does a lot with emergency communication planning and acts as that key partner during emergencies as well. And with that, we have 19.5 FTE. So some of the changes that I spoke to earlier and the reductions that we highlighted we took our division took a little under a 5% total reduction, as we've heard of kind of that surgical approach to where we might see minimal impact, but also what can we do to really do our part. So with that, there's trainings that have been reduced, memberships to agencies have been reduced, agency payments has been reduced, so facilitation work as well as office supplies, you know, who do we use to take our minutes and so forth, and reduce there and see where we can get creative and have other efficiencies. So in terms of, you know, summarizing some of these goals or some of these changes, we're trying to really stay focused on the goals. So looking at increasing organizational efficiency and effectiveness. We do a hard job of saying no to things. And so really trying to be mindful, as it's been a hard year, and looking at reductions, trying not to just say we're gonna do more with less, but really trying to check in with staff and monitor and see where, if possible, we do less with less, and really think through strategically about how to let go of things or delay things. I'm hard time saying no. And so then just really living within our means, and the financial management and analysis as well. So some of our key initiatives for this upcoming budget year, we're working to really finalize our strategic plan. There's several outreach opportunities and engagement efforts starting next week, if anybody here is interested, to really collect kind of that final input in defining what our strategic plan looks like for the next 3 years. I briefly spoke about justice courts, but we've launched a new collection agency to hopefully help continue to collect revenue for them, so it's looking promising. We're excited to launch working with eScribe, which is a board agenda software program, and it's really hoping to make things a lot more efficient, not only for our staff, but primarily for everybody across the county that's working with the board and bringing material forward to the board. Our equity strategic plan was recently adopted, and our 2024 to 2027 equity strategic plan. So work on implementing that, as well as board meeting procedures, so just updating some of those, as well as training. And then we also throw in some pictures here of trying to make the most of things and having fun. And I think, you know, taking the time to have, you know, our annual picnic that we like to have. So definitely several staff here in county administration working with others across the county to prepare and just make the most for our employees and provide that, as well as giving back to the community in the left there at the bottom. A recent Day of Caring effort where we helped with a local youth farm, out pulling weeds and gathering produce, and it's great to give back, and also it's fun for our department. And then dodgeball, you can see there in the lower right, just another opportunity for a charitable event, working with United Way to bring in some money for our community, but also have some fun as well. And then finally, or my last slide, just some of the opportunities, which I loved earlier. Thank you, Alana Holmes. But some of the challenges, just continuing to work with the library funding and assessing what that looks like for the future, looking at revenue, looking at how best we continue with outreach there. And then justice courts, just kind of monitoring that as well, as it's been increasing over the years on how much discretionary general fund that we are using for justice courts. So just trying to make the most to partner with them, share resources, see where we can help them improve, collect more money, but also look at efficiencies as well. And then federal changes has been mentioned as well, just making sure we're constantly reviewing what's coming from federal changes, looking at analysis and impacts and how that impacts our employees and our community. And then more on the opportunity side, just looking forward to that strategic plan to really provide that clarity and focus of what are our priorities going to be, what do we say yes to, what might we say no to, and then continuing to be innovative, creating efficiencies, working with our policy lab, for instance, and the local university, and just being thoughtful on how to maybe do things differently, creatively, as we go into this year, trying to live more within our means and how that's impacting others. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Blythe to talk about the operations division.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lauren Blythe, Director of Operations. We will go through in a similar fashion the operations division with some changes in FY 25-26, as well as initiatives and challenges and opportunities. So in operations, we have three program areas. These are capital planning and facilities management, the clerk's office, and financial services. Out of these three, we have two that are central services, essentially, which is capital planning, facilities, and financial services. We do have a sliver within the clerk's office that is central services. That's essentially 0.25 of an FTE that helps with archives. So a little bit of background. This is my first time getting to present to this committee since being in this role. I do understand that and appreciate that as central services, there's oftentimes the work goes kind of unseen and it's behind the scenes work. Our customer base is essentially the county employees, the departments, the folks in this room. And so we're grateful for that. We take a lot of pride, the team takes a lot of pride in the service they provide to the departments, and we understand that the work we do helps them be successful in providing those direct services. Capital planning and facilities management, it's a little bit of a mouthful. So this program, we have about 41 FTE. I don't think we have slides on that. So there's 41 FTE. Within this program, there's about $7 million of that that's facilities management, and then about 22, 23 around capital planning. The bulk of that is from the capital improvement fund. Some of that does go to staff, 2 or 1 point some percentage of FTE. I always have to look at Christine because I don't always know the numbers. So the majority of this program in terms of staffing and the work is funded through the indirect plan. And again, as I said, the capital planning team coming from capital fund. So as we know, facilities get constructed, they get renovated, they age. Because of that, we have things like heating systems, cooling systems, mechanical and electrical that need tending to. They need to stay running to make sure the conditions in our facilities are appropriate, they're comfortable. And of course, we all value a clean and a sanitary environment. Even outside of COVID, it's important that things stay clean and kept up. So additional services within the purview of facilities or the capital planning and facilities team is property management, mail courier, and the warehouse, which I'll speak to a little bit more in a few minutes. Our public facing or direct service is the county clerk's office. That team, we often refer to them, particularly the election side, as small and mighty. Collectively, the election side plus deeds and records, which is also referred to as recording, we have 15 FTE and a budget of around $3.5 million. This program is general funded. We do get funds through fees collected for property, title, and deed recordings, research, marriage license, and domestic partnership certification issuance. Things of that nature. This team also, in addition to some of those services, of course, we administer an elections. We also maintain voter registrations, new voter registrations, and updates to registrations. We also support or really host the Property Value Appeals Board, formerly known as Board of Property Tax Appeals. That name changed a couple years ago. And as I mentioned earlier, we house the archives program, 0.25 of an FTE. Quick side note, if you haven't voted, please vote. We have an election coming up on May 20th. This is the 2025 special election. You should all have your ballots, and if you don't, please contact the elections office. The third program within operations, central service, is financial services. We have Greg Holmes here, our finance manager and treasurer. Greg oversees a team of 15 with also about a $3.5 million budget funded through the indirect plan. Some of the main components within that team are accounts payable and accounts receivables for the services we provide, where we, and various things for which we collect money. We want to make sure we get paid. We also need to make sure we get our vendors paid in a timely and accurate fashion. Greg also oversees the investments portfolio, procurement, purchase cards, and financial reporting. Financial reporting, you've all probably heard of the biggest main deliverable there is each year that team aggregates our financial data countywide and compiles the annual comprehensive financial report. This report, plus the two levies we have, the Sheriff's Office jail levy and the Parks levy, each year are audited by an external party to ensure that we have sound financial management practices. We just presented, or Greg and our auditing team just presented that to the board last week. Successful and clean audit. Also, not to forget the payroll team that also ensures that we get paid on a bi-weekly basis. So that's an overview of the three programs in operations. Changes in FY 25-26. I may not necessarily go in the order listed there. Probably the most significant change from a budgetary perspective is that in the process that Judy outlined, the brainstorming, the partnership, the ideas and the feedback, we identified the central warehouse as I guess an opportunity for savings. In the assessment and the research and analysis we did, we realized that the cost of the central warehouse really exceeded the value that it was bringing to the county. Basically, over the years, the use of that service, or that service has changed, and the use of that facility has changed. It's about a 19,000 square foot warehouse on the Public Works Delta campus. Historically, it was used as a central supply store, as well as surplus office furniture and other excess items. Over the years, purchasing habits have changed. Volume or bulk discounts have changed, and so it's less valuable to use as a central supply facility. I think all of us in our personal lives probably click a button on a website, and a couple days later, UPS drops it off at our door. So perhaps a little bit different, but not too different from an enterprise perspective, where our purchasing habits as an organization have changed, and the value we get out of the warehouse is just not there anymore. So as such, we identified the warehouse as a service that we're going to be ending at the end of this fiscal year. So as of July, it will no longer operate as it has in the past. And with that comes the elimination of one stores clerk position that is currently filled. We are looking at alternative uses for the facility itself, working with a few departments to make sure we get the highest and best use of that space. Once we do that, though, it'll essentially be out of facilities' hands in terms of any kind of stewardship. So another savings opportunity is starting now in current fiscal year, but we won't realize the true or overall savings until for another few months. And so we've took on a countywide lighting upgrade project. We're working with an energy savings corporation, which is a special carve out for corporations that come in and they identify energy savings opportunities and guarantee those savings. So we partnered with one of those organizations, and I'm not sure how far through the project we are. I think most of the PSB is already done, and we're starting to do some of our other buildings, and they're basically going through and replacing old, less efficient fluorescent and incandescent bulbs with modern high efficiency LED bulbs. It's a big project just in terms of scale. It's a fairly simple project in terms of logistically it's challenging because we have workspaces that operate and serve the public, and so there's a lot of coordination that goes on there. All that to say that once the project is done, that I don't remember the dollar amount, but there's a significant amount of savings that we should start realizing. Well, really with each bulb that's replaced, but then once that project is done, and we get into fiscal year 25-26, there should be significant savings there. Plus, the older bolts are no longer being manufactured, they're slowly being phased out. So some additional changes and budget savings were we eliminated, or will be eliminating 2 temporary custodial positions on the custodial team. One of these was vacant, one is filled. The impact of that, it's a half-time position, and I believe that team is 20 or 21 custodians. So we think at this point we can absorb that the impact of that, losing that half-time position. One of the things we do, not just for custodial but for maintenance as well, is David Ward, our capital and facilities manager, is working on service level agreements for those 2 teams. Basically what that does is we work with our customers, the departments, to set expectations on what service levels mean for the staffing we have, the square footage we have, and the demands we have on the time for that team. And within that process and setting of those expectations, you know, some of those things are variable, whether it's a staffing level, it's variable, whether it's a square footage and the number of spaces that we service, that varies, we grow. Sometimes we lose buildings or consolidate. And so it's important to us to make sure our customers, the departments, it's clear that, you know, with staffing we have, here's the work we can do. Here's the level of quality to expect from custodial, or even turnaround times to expect on maintenance and facility requests. So we're in the process of kind of revising that now. We have found, and we're hopeful that in that process of setting those expectations, we align satisfaction. If folks are expecting a higher level of service or faster turnaround time on things, and yet we don't communicate that we don't have the capacity to do that, is where you get the dissatisfaction. But in that communication process, that partnership, and realistic setting of expectations, we're hopeful that customer satisfaction levels will actually go up, even if there's less staffing and less capacity. So other changes in FY 25-26, particularly around budget reduction items, were janitorial supplies, garbage collection, not so much the garbage and refuse. And so that's like our contract with Sanipack. We made some changes current fiscal year to consolidate billing and make some changes to how garbage is picked up. We were having Sanipack show up weekly and empty bins that might only have a little bit of waste in them. We had more bins in more places than what we needed. So the facilities team, David Ward and his team did a really good job a few months ago of doing an assessment around that to identify efficiencies, consolidate where we can, and right-size that service so that when they do a pickup, they're actually picking up. It's worth their while and saving money for us. All that said, I think overall, I think it was a reduction of around 11%. I'm not positive on that. It may have just been more 11%. Well, no, yes, I think it was about 11% reduction. The standardization of processes around our PeopleSoft finance system, that will be a change in FY 25-26, but I'm actually going to speak to that more in the context of an opportunity in a few minutes. Key initiatives for operations in the upcoming fiscal year. So we've got a handful of large projects queued up. Well, the finance system process improvement is a big one. Essentially, so the last time, as I understand it, I wasn't quite here, you would have been here. The last time our finance system, when I say finance system, it's our enterprise system that where we handle all of our accounts payable, our accounts receivable. Our payroll is actually on the HR side, except for the journals, not to get techie, but the journals that come over the finance side. I mean, that's where we do all of our financial work. The last time that system was looked at for efficiency, for proper use, was 2004. So it's been a minute. And with the growth that we've had as a county and the increased dependence on grant revenue for funding, it's time for us to take a look at it, make sure we're using this system that we have in the best way that we can. Right now, we're in an assessment phase. We haven't committed to making any changes because we want to hear from the vendor that we've hired, what that looks like, what that impact will be, what the cost will be, what the roadmap to that will be, because it will be significant. So we want to know what we're getting into and approach it carefully, understanding that a big component of that is, because it will be a lot of change, a big component of that is will impact our staff, the folks that do the work on a day-to-day basis. And so we want to make sure we are approaching that cautiously. But it really is also an opportunity, right? I mean, it's a challenge. We've seen the effects of not having some more mature processes in our environment. When we were a smaller organization, the system would scale better, and the system really does scale fine now. But other variables in the management of our financial system are such that it's time for us to take a look and see what we can do better. Let's see, procurement and contract system training. So we've got in finance lies our procurement team. Our procurement manager, Sean Hubble, has really done a great job maturing, I hate to overuse that word, but maturing our procurement processes and making sure our staff, as procurement is done out in the departments, because it's essentially a decentralized process, that folks are aware of what their responsibilities are in spending public funds. And so following procurement process, understanding contract, maybe not contract law, but understanding contracting within the scope of their role to make sure that we are stewarding those funds well. Sean has partnered with Emily Vario in County Council, who's really on the legal side of things, and the two of them they've developed an initial training series, or the initial steps to what will be a series for procurement and contract training. Right now it's instructor-led, they do in person, but we're hoping to turn that into video-based. It doesn't sound real significant, but when you realize all of the purchasing, all of the expenditures that happen in all of the departments and the amount of turnover we've had over the years, a lot of the institutional knowledge and understanding of how we used to do things has gone out the door. And how we used to do it doesn't mean it's how we should be doing it going forward. So they're doing a really good job of tightening that up. Let's see. Ballot drop box optimization. So elections tends to get, they get a fair amount of attention, as they should, especially in the last year or 5. This project is an effort to ensure we have 21 drop boxes, drop sites across the county, from Oak Ridge to Florence, Junction City down to Cottage Grove. Most of those drop boxes have been where they are for a very long time. And so we've recognized that as population centers have, changed or grown in different areas in different ways, it would be helpful and beneficial to our voting public to make sure that those drop boxes are sited in appropriate locations relative to populations and sized appropriately. Where we've had growth in some areas, we've got smaller boxes that our driver ballot pickup teams have to make more trips than maybe they should. So it may result in some efficiencies there. So looking forward to that. Quick side note, which is maybe a little bit of a challenge. We are currently without a county clerk. Most folks know our former county clerk, Dina Dawson, got called up to the big leagues and is now the director of elections at the Secretary of State's office. So actively recruiting for a county clerk. If you know anyone that's qualified and interested, please send them my way. So there may be some impacts to our ability or capacity to move that project along, but we're hopeful to get it done. Now's the time to do it, coming off of the last year's general election. Facility and space programming. So most folks know it's been probably 6 years now, 2018, 19. The county took on a large project to try to build a new courthouse. For all the reasons why we needed to do that back then, they still exist, and even more so. One of the primary drivers behind that is space within our courthouse. Our courthouse houses three main critical services or groups. It's our court folks, it's the district attorney's office, and the sheriff's office. All three of those groups, all three of those departments are in need of more space and better space. I could fill up quite a few slides with pictures of what that looks like and what it means. But needless to say, the conditions that existed 7 or 8 years ago that caused us to want to pursue that still exists, or even more so the case now. All that to say, we also recognize we have some underutilized spaces here in the PSB and maybe some other buildings. And with some potential, other square footage options, we feel it's important to really not just look at a small piece of this and what it might mean to help the courthouse in this one spot or the sheriff's office and those. We want to look at the big picture. We want to take a more strategic approach and make sure we're setting ourselves up for whether it's growth down the road or changes in services. We also want to make sure our customers the public is a primary actor in this. So their accessibility to our services, whether that's co-locating like services or public services in one place and administrative or central services in another, is critical. Also accessibility, we have some accessibility challenges here in this building with the era that this facility was built in was not quite in the forefront of folks' mind in terms of access for differently able citizens. We also have the elections office, the clerk's office over at 10th and Lincoln is not an ideal location in particular or facility for the work that team does. And so there may be some opportunities and savings by looking at that as a more from a bigger perspective. So we're in the early stages of that now, trying to identify what the process would look like to gather that information to inform a decision down the road. The last one I'll touch on here is the PSB central plant upgrade. I mentioned earlier facilities have mechanical, electrical, plumbing. I threw in, it might be hard to see, I don't know what it is, but it's building infrastructure something. And I meant to ask Matt or David what that is, but it's a little crusty. And not to scare anyone, but that's not the worst of it. Not far from here is a very large water tank that has more rust on it than that. So the need for this work was actually identified many years ago, or twice, I think, like early 2010s, and again in the mid or later 2010s. And then again, about 2 years ago, we had our Energy Savings partner come in and basically put together some options. One of those options, or at the top of the list in terms of criticality and priority, was our central plant. And so they're currently in the assessment phase, in the evaluation of what that work is going to look like. And in 25-26, we look forward to them actually presenting what the implementation plan would be. And that would be big. We just replaced our generator. I don't know if anyone that's driven down 7th in the last couple of weeks has seen a standby or auxiliary generator on 7th. It might be gone already. And I wasn't here, but at 5 a.m. a couple weeks ago, apparently there was a big crane on 7th that lifted the new generator up onto the rooftop, or the plaza rooftop. The old generator, well, I guess it's still there now. I don't think they've made the cut over yet, is in the basement below grade. And I think about 35 years old. So difficult to find parts. One other key point about our central plant, again, not only does it keep us cool and our environment comfortable, it drives the cooling of and the function of critical systems like our data center and dispatch. So it's not just for our comfort, it's for those key systems as well. Did I get them all? Oh, wrong button. Future challenges and opportunities. Some of this I've touched on. Let's see. So one of our challenges, it's not new this fiscal year, but it continues to be a challenge, and that's our revenue we get from in deeds and records. So the recording team, one of their primary things, or one of the more high volume things that they do is they record property deeds and titles. And because of stagnant home sales, there's not a lot of that going on. And so we've also had a fair amount, I didn't list it here, but a fair amount of turnover on that team, and they're really doing great. They're getting their feet underneath them. We're almost fully staffed, but we had, in the course of about a year and a half or two, we had 4 folks retire that had over like 105 years combined experience. They had been here a long time. So the turnover rate up until a couple years ago was like incredibly low. Since then, it's been, because it's not a real big team, it was incredibly high. Anyhow, all that to say is that with a new team, also still without a clerk, they're doing a great job, but and despite the reduced volume of transactions around property recordings with the new team, they're struggling a little bit. So that continues to be a challenge. Look to turn the corner on that once we get a new clerk. Deferred maintenance of facilities infrastructure, so not too different from the central plant itself. We have other systems in other buildings. We have roofs, other building infrastructure things that over time and with lack of investment or attention, they need some TLC. The process for that is every year through the budget office, we have the capital improvement plan, and there's a facilities capital improvement plan portion of that. And so the capital team works with departments to identify building needs, capital facility needs, and we create a list. We work with the facility standing committee to prioritize that list to ensure, and there's a scoring rubric and a scoring team that evaluates those. So we put them in priority order so that we know that we're tackling the most critical things that need that time and attention. I thought I threw something else on here. I mentioned service level expectations. I already really spoke to the financial, but again, I see that as an opportunity, right? It's been challenging in terms of lack of optimal use of our financial system, but really it's a big opportunity. And what's exciting about that is it's brought together with Greg and Christine in particular. They've really assembled a community of financial practitioners, essentially, the folks that do our finance work across the county, and at least one person from each department, some departments, multiple. So they're creating this community, and together are identifying how we can make better use of the system going forward. And standardization here, standardization in procurement and contracts and in other ways. And I think I'm done. Mr. Adams. Thank you. You have the college.
All right, Chair and Committee, delighted to be back before you. I'm Steve Adams. I'm the Policy Director, and I join the Chief of Staff and the Operations Director as kind of the triad for the department that is County Administration. So this too is my first time addressing the Budget Committee since we were created as a team, and we'll show up as a team, policy team. So we were kind of constituted, I think, for the fiscal 23 budget for the first time. And we were essentially the creation of bringing a lot of existing programs together into a new organization. And in fact, I think my position was the only new FTE created to create the policy team. So the idea is to get synergies specifically for strategic initiatives for county government and to really try to place a focus and onus of effort into trying to advance efforts of importance to the board, to county administration, and to the departments as a whole. And so the policy division specifically is a total of 12 FTE across these particular department IDs. And we're funded in a kind of mixed matrix sort of fashion. So policy administration is me. So I'm the one FTE that's there. And I bill half my time to my team, and I bill the other half through the indirect plan, so to the counties.
And so joining me in working on policy division initiatives are a number of these programs. Our Community and Economic Development Program, which the Vice Chair once led here in Wayne County.
Many years ago now.
And we're trying to keep you proud. So this is 2FTE, funded with video lottery dollar proceeds that come to county government for purposes of economic development. We're a convener here. We have economic development activities specifically within our cities, but we really kind of help to amplify, we convene, we bring other actors too. So chambers of commerce, other actors like CEDO, that's an acronym, Chair Lovell, I don't remember what it is, but they are a convener. We have Onward Eugene and other actors who are very active in economic development, and we often, Jason Harris and Samantha Roberts, who are part of that team, often serve as conductors to try to bring alignment and prosperity there. We're really focused specifically on infrastructure and business readiness. The Vice Chair has been working on CHIPS Act readiness, and really a big piece of that locally has been kind of industrial site readiness specifically so that we can grow. Infrastructure being a key piece there. Intergovernmental affairs, my phone is pinging away because Vanessa Cornwall, our intergovernmental affairs manager, is busy in Salem at the moment. Specifically, intergovernmental affairs attends to our federal and state activities, lobbies for positions that the board has taken on specific issues of importance, and most importantly tries to secure federal and state funds of importance to county government to carry on. Our grants strategy management team, so if you've been looking at the details of the policy division budget over the last couple of years, you've seen this kind of reconstituted or restated. We created this initially as the American Recovery Plan Act, ARPA team, and they were created initially to administer $80 million in direct allocated dollars from that program. It came to us in fiscal 23, somewhere in there, 22, 23. So that team was really kind of a big grants administration team. And then the legislature that year pushed several dollars down that were appropriated initially to the state, and they allocated it to local programs. So that team had $95 million under management at one time for a whole suite of different kinds of projects. Some that were internally oriented, doing facilities upgrades for a lot of our work, but also pots of dollars that were administered out into the community as the board directed us to stand up a community fund, and we did a call for proposals, and we were able to fund quite a lot of activities. Over time, this program has really started to focus on central fundraising for county government, and as I said earlier in the kind of state and federal overview, the way that we're looking at money now and trying to bring in strategic growth dollars for county government is having to change as we see some things change at the state level. Our Community Resilience and Recovery team, this is 2FTE, Matt McRae is leading the effort here. This is specifically focused on holiday farm fire recovery in the McKenzie Valley. This year, and I'll speak more to this, is a pretty significant changeover. We're 5 years into this recovery effort. Much of the funding heretofore has been state appropriated funds, and we're switching now over to federal dollars. Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR funds are now coming in. Our delegation was successful in ensuring that we had $422 million inserted in a congressional disaster supplemental a few years back now, and so that is now washing through. Our climate action team, so this came over from Public Works. This is funded by our Solid Waste Management Fund. Specifically, this program, after working specifically on developing a climate action plan for county government, both on the emission reduction side, but also on the disaster risk reduction and resilience side, has been super focused on bringing resources in. Under the last administration, there was a lot of federal funds associated with this program. We continue to see specific opportunities for funding This program was successful in bringing in a $19.5 million grant from the EPA to build 6 resilience hubs around the county. Sadly, this past Friday, we got a termination notice from EPA. We're working through that. This program also brought in a couple of other projects, one to look at our energy grid as a whole. We have a lot of different kinds of utilities, municipals and rural cooperatives in Wayne County, a real patchwork quilt. And we have another funding opportunity that's in progress that looks at the resilience of our transportation network. It's a little bit hung up in the process now, but we continue to be optimistic that that will come through ultimately. So this program has been another advocate for bringing resources to bear specifically. And then our housing production program, this was this is one FTE, likewise funded by video lottery funds specifically. This was a position that was created some years ago to focus on houselessness within Wayne County. This was a jointly funded position between Eugene and Wayne County. That changed in the course of the pandemic, and we've really kind of recalibrated this to focus specifically on trying to ensure that we have greater housing production over time. And I'll just back up by noting too that the emergency management team, this is 3 FTE, the department, and this shows up as a specific, for budget purposes, department as a separate entity. This is likewise in the policy division. So emergency management is led by Tiffany Brown with 2 staff, and that's not part of the 12, so that's the 3 that adds in, right? Yeah, okay. Getting more than 2 digits here. All right, so let's see. So going in, as we said, as the Chief of Staff said, the policy division with a couple of our funding revenue sources coming in from central services engaged specifically in the opportunity to find cost savings and to ensure that the resources coming into the policy division were really focused on service delivery and getting good value. So we were able to, ours is a fairly small budget. The 24% is probably more significant than the 21,000, but nonetheless, we were able to reduce some of our expenses through this kind of collaborative process that we were able to do. So we cut mostly materials and supplies funding, and we did cut one pot that we used to provide funds for students who serve as interns in our legislative affairs program. So we had 2 slots, and we're going to reduce that to 1. And we're mitigating that with other kinds of opportunities that we have through the policy lab that the Chief of Staff spoke to earlier. The other changes this year is I spoke about the transition of the American Recovery Plan Act, ARPA, team to this long-term grant strategy specifically. So we continue to work on thinking about how this team operates. So first and foremost, we focused on ensuring excellence with respect to compliance with federal grant terms, conditions, and requirements. Every federal grant comes with a suite of them. They're very complex, and it's very easy to be out of compliance. We have no desire to be out of compliance with any of those conditions. And this team really is serving as a center of excellence within county government to ensure that anywhere across county government, folk have the resources they need to understand arcane Code of Federal Regulation, CFRs. They're also beginning to look beyond the kinds of funding that we've been focused on. With the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and with the Inflation Reduction Act during the Biden administration, there was a generational level of federal funds available. And so it really was a surfeit and really applying for all of the funds that were available. We spent an enormous amount of time just trying to do that and making sure that we could identify the maximum number of grant recipients within the geographic 4 corners of Wayne County, that they too could be pulling these resources in to ensure that we were making maximum investments.
This is shifting. We talked about the fiscal environment at the federal and state level in the earlier session. And so we need to get better and smarter about other kinds of financing activities that we can engage in. So we're engaged in the process now of looking for a more strategic approach of trying to help partner with our program leadership within the departments, thinking about specific resources they will need to innovate and to move forward, and to connect dots between our intergovernmental affairs work and our grants research work so that we can follow the money from an appropriation into an agency and out through a notice of federal or funding availability in a really disciplined fashion. The other piece of change that's happening this year that I mentioned is the changeover from largely state-funded recovery activities associated with the Holiday Farm Fire of 2020 to federal funds. So with federal funds comes through particularly the Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery comes with a host of federal requirements that make this work challenging. But the team is standing up 2 portfolios of programming that's about $25 million that's flowing through the Oregon Community and Housing Services Department, OHCS specifically. And one is focused on housing solutions. So this is mostly focused on providing housing opportunities for folk who were renters in the McKenzie Valley prior to the fire. And secondly, administering a pot of funds that are kind of in a planning and infrastructure portfolio. And so we are working on that and have been working for some time. The key initiatives, of course, as I spoke, is really kind of keeping current with federal and state funding opportunities specifically to kind of ensure that we can tap the funding end. You see the wildfire recovery component there in the centerpiece. On the right of that, laying the pipe, the infrastructure piece. We're working on tapping into specific federal funds through the Water Resources Development Act that is with the intent to realize a longstanding board objective to realize the GREAT Plan, which is an acronym, Chair, that I don't know. It's Goshen related specifically.
Yes.
Sarah Ming. Okay.
Goshen Regional Employment Area. No. It's too far back, sorry.
It's specifically, so we're working to ensure that we are extending infrastructure there using the Water Resources Development Act as an initiative. We're working specifically on the housing production piece, and the county administrator laid out an initiative where we would use reserve funds as a land banking opportunity to purchase and then tune up parcels that we could use to that would be upzone essentially, and really targeted at homeowners in the at the area median income. And of course, we continue to work on our ability to respond to fire and ice on all of the fronts associated with that. You heard me speak at length about the challenges of trying to stay current with the federal and state processes. We're currently, and you heard me speak a little bit about some of the decisions process earlier at the federal level. So we've certainly we worked hard to land grants, and we worked hard to retain them in the current environment. And then now it's thinking about what comes next. Challenges associated with the complexity of the new funding levels, and the thing that we're all living with is uncertainty. And that, Chair Mark Conte, is all I have.
Excellent. Thank you to the group. Such helpful context to understand sort of the whole structure, which I had not seen before, so I just appreciate you all coming and sharing with us today. I'll open it for questions for the committee.
Real briefly, hopefully this is easy. Steve Adams, you mentioned 25 million in CDBG-DR, but there was 422 that came to the state, right? So can you help me understand why 25 million is the number, and is there opportunity for more?
Indeed.
That
Well,
might be a can of worms.
I appreciate the question. Well, so this has been a long and ongoing saga. I will say this is the first CDBG DR that the state of Oregon has ever administered. So it has had some growing pains over the years. So in the action plan, we saw an allocation initially from OHCS into functions, not sites, right? So we had multiple fires during 2022, and a lot of the state dollars previously and now locally, the federal dollars have been allocated on the basis of housing units lost. So we had a much more concentrated degree of destruction associated with the Alameda fire further south. We've had a lot more in the way of infrastructure destruction on how a smaller number of units, right? And so this has been an issue that our board has really advocated for in state government and really kind of elevated. The program at OHCS has changed over time. They've brought in new leadership. There's a higher degree of collaboration that's happening now. So and this is, I think, the initial allocations. In our sense is that there will be unsubscribed dollars that will be redirected back in. And so our focus is on executing with alacrity on this particular project and ensuring that we can have fundable projects for when there's extra dollars available.
Understood. Thank you.
I think Commissioner Farr.
The Goshen Regional Employment and Transition Plan.
Thank you.
Who can forget that?
I know.
That's an easy one.
How could I possibly forget?
It's a biggie. I've got one point that I want to make, but first off, sitting at the far end of the room here, whoever made the decision to add positions for you, Lauren, and you, Steve, and Greg for you, that was brilliant, because the work that you all do combined and together is just remarkable. And you're touching areas that, scratching itches that just were long unscratched, Steve. And I'm not going to say anything about Judy, who's been here about 7 years longer than I have, longer even than Herb. So, I mean, the work that you do as a team is just remarkable in bringing focus on areas that otherwise would just be kind of vaguely out there, and actually focusing on accomplishments and outcomes. And it really is tremendous. The one point I want to make, though, is something that you said, Lauren, and that you backed up, Steve. And this is a weird thing that I wrote down. Deeds and records revenue for recording and document search. Due to stagnant home sales, service needs have declined in deeds and records. That's a tiny part of the budget, but it's a huge statement, stagnant home sales. And Steve, you're talking about recalibrating to focus specifically on housing production. Each of our houses, if we own a house in this area, is just about doubled in market value. At the same time, we're falling behind by, 1,200 units a year on housing production regionally. And the fact that you both said it in your, and it kind of almost an offhand statement in your presentations, but it really focused on something that we are suffering from. We're suffering from a lack of housing, and we all know that. But this is a time to talk about it a little bit and to elevate it and make sure that we're always thinking about how do we find ways to get people into housing, to fill the 1,200 unit deficit that we're experiencing every year. And if nothing else, you get a few more dollars into deeds and records. And that's the point I wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right. Well, thank you so much to our Chief of Staff, Chief Operations Officer, and Policy Director. This was incredibly helpful.
Springport Economic Development Agency.
Missed it.
I knew it. Thank you, sir.
They're out of the way. Here comes the team.
Here they come.
The whole team. The whole team.
And there's 8 of them.
Really, I mean, they're working hard.
He's the best one. I'm gonna have to give him award at the end of the year
Yeah, I
or something
think
when
you're
it's all
right.
done.
How many did he get?
Just mentioned 20 of them. He got all of them. Man, that guy swims in them.
But she did say that when she's done.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Yep. She's leaving at 4.
The whole department coming in here.
On in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll give everyone a moment to get settled,
There's a spot down here. I almost went over there.
welcome to our technology services team. We will just turn it over to Director Finch for your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair Marconte and members of our budget committee. My name is Mike Finch. I'm our Chief Information Officer here at Lane County, and I am really happy to be here and present our FY 25-26 budget for all of you. With me, we have our management team representing the different divisions we'll go through. We've got 25 minutes, really going to try to keep this to maybe 15 or so if possible, so we can leave plenty of time for questions. And as such, we decided collectively, just for time's sake, although we would love for them to come up and present their different divisions, I'll just kind of go through them quickly. But they're all here if you have questions, so that you have expertise in the room and able to represent. So kicking us off, okay, got the right direction. I was presenting at OAM this morning and the clicker was going backwards, so I was really confused. Our purpose in technology services is leveraging technology to improve lives. To achieve that purpose, we have 8 divisions that serve the county in various functions. We're going to go ahead and talk about those in a few moments, but before we go through that, so we have 79.5 FTE and other information on the slides I won't read, so we can go on through here. But diving into our expenses, our revenue, we have 6 primary revenue sources. They include countywide indirect, and that's the bulk of the shared services out there. And mind you, we operate out of a few different internal service funds. So our rates are set through calculations and chargeback models in those funds. So indirect, countywide indirect pays for service desk, networks, servers, all those services that we share and work on together. And then we have department direct. Department direct is services that are funded by departments specifically for applications and other services that they consume within their different lines of businesses. Public Works Waste Management System or Assessment and Taxation tax systems, those are examples of department direct services that they fund directly. Telecom fees for our telephone system. And then regional services. This year happens to mark our 60th year anniversary in providing regional services. In 1965, we got our first mainframe and shared that across multiple agencies to afford that and experience that economies of scale and savings. I will mention as we move forward, of course, the cloud is the ultimate economies of scale. And so this is generally an area that's reducing year over year as we more and more shift into the cloud services. However, one area that isn't is in our most valuable resource, which is people. We share our skill sets and our people and lean into each other more than ever before. And City of Eugene and Springfield are our predominant customers in our data center that just sits right downstairs. And then our technology replacement fund, of course, that's the PC replacements, infrastructure replacements, licenses, those kinds of things. And then Rural Fire Fiscal Agency, new this year for managing that fund, and we'll talk about it on another slide. Moving through general discretionary general fund. This is up here because this year we're transitioning the Office of Data and Analytics into a division in technology services. So this represents kind of that one-time movement of this. And then that'll factor into our rates in the coming years. And we'll talk about this division separately in the coming slide. And then budget detail or expenditures. So this is where we get to talk about the reductions. I've heard others say it, but I want to call attention to it. Steve mentioned a surgical approach. Because we do develop an internal service fund rate, we always tend to be planning our budget in the fall. And typically we're going first and people aren't in budget mode. But this year we brought everybody together and it was in October and it was was actually really remarkable to be able to plan our services all together as a group and really make some tremendous decisions. I mean, hard decisions, but I guess the tremendous part is that we work together to really tailor these adjustments and changes in the best possible way for our county. And we'll talk about these changes as I go through the division so you can kind of see the impacts in the different areas that we support. I will say there were, I think, 64 materials and services that were reduced as part of this. So we did both personnel FTE reductions and M&S. And so I'll use a few examples, but there's quite a list, so I'll cover them all. Other trends, of course, those increased personnel costs. And then this year we did have an Oracle licensing audit for our HR financial software suite, and that resulted in a license monetization and increased costs there. Shifting into our divisions. Administration and finance, Jill Allen is the manager of this division, and Jesse Hollingsworth is our supervisor. This division of 7.5 FTE, includes myself, takes care of helping our whole department operate, as well as partnering with all of our departments for answering questions, building budgets, contracts, HR, training, all of those pieces to help keep our department humming. They also spend a lot of time managing our replacement funds, and we are a materials and service centric department. We do a lot of purchasing, obviously, for hardware, but in particular software licenses, and we keep those are things we have to stay on top of, because like at home, right, you have your Netflix and news subscriptions, all of these little subscription fees. Well, licensing is much that way, right? Those little costs that are like, oh, it's $10 a month, they add up over time, and we have well over $5 million in licensing subscriptions going on. And so they have been investing in better and better tools and helping the county see and manage these costs so that we can work together to control these. So just an example of some of the things they do. M&S reductions were taken in this division, and that was mostly training reductions, training cost reductions. Business service division, so this is a 35 FTE. This is our largest division. Kay Youngblood and Nina Fox are here with us. They co-manage this division because we break this up into a couple teams. Much like a holding company, we have a wide array of different business models out there. And so we kind of break them up into kind of its cutesy lane, law, land, and life. Lane is county-wide services. Land is like public works and assessment taxation. Life, of course, is our health and human service applications and services. And then law, so that's our public safety, DA, Sheriff's Office, CJRS. So they split the load there in helping provide good contact and understanding of what's going on. In this division, they manage everything from phones and applications and such, but they also manage change in our organization. We're always bringing in new applications, so they have project management and business analysis services that help that go. We had a 1 FTE reduction in this division that was a programmer and primarily supported data work for Health and Human Services countywide. Fortunately, we had another opening, so this didn't result in a layoff, but a reduction in those services. And then materials and services, many examples of application services we reduced. An example is PeopleSoft Single Sign-On. That is a third-party plugin we use to make it so when you click into PeopleSoft, you don't have to log in. But it's $15,000 a year, and without that, it means people just use their password once a day. That's the kind of reduction we want to make rather than reducing people serving our community, right? So that's an example of a type of M&S. Some of them are duplicative services, but some of them have impacts like that. And so moving on, I will also mention in this division we have 2 technical supervisors. We have Maurice Machado and we have Bill Bowman. And actually, Adam Vellutini is also our GIS supervisor. So they manage our applications and our middleware services and GIS. Customer service support. If your technology isn't working, you're not working. And you probably most feel that when you come to a meeting and your Teams isn't working right or something, but it could be anything where something is going wrong. So they call our service desk. Right, so this division is really that front line of support to help us keep up and running. So service desk. Jill Allen manages this division, and Marina Sosa is a technical supervisor. Many of you may know Marina. She is quite the quite the changer and improver, and make sure that service desk is up and running. Our field services folks are out and able to go to our different areas and help people with equipment or get things running. And then our technology replacement team replaces hundreds of PCs a year. They have to order those, spec them, unbox them, image them, and get them out to departments. Changes in our PC replacement program a couple of years ago that were adopted by all departments have really driven some efficiencies and improvements in this as they've been able to projectize those replacements. And we are receiving predominantly very positive feedback from departments on that work. Reductions here were mostly in supplies. They're obviously always buying a lot of cables and peripherals and other things, so they're really working hard to contain those and reuse where we can. Cybersecurity and compliance. Kim Morgan is our County Information Security Officer back here. She oversees this small but mighty division that is responsible for the thing we're all aware of, right? Cybersecurity is that thing that's always on our minds these days. But protecting us is actually just a very small piece of what they do. They're also responsible for just setting up all new users, for physical access, for badges. They do public records requests, security investigations, and they also, this year we've transferred our software administration into this because we have to vet all new services that come in start with security. So we have to vet and review our software, so that brought some efficiency as well. Putting into this group. Their reductions were primarily, again, materials and services in duplicative services. An example is Okta, LogMeIn, and Remote Control, which is a duplicative remote access solution that we can shift off of as we use other solutions to help save money. Moving into data and analytics, Tina Saltisack is our County Data and Analytics Officer. This department transitioning into a division, carrying forward their work, focused definitely on culture, access, and doing. And I think one of the biggest needs here is data governance and bringing that access to data, but that all really hinges on culture and people understanding what it can do for us and why it's important. I think once people know why sharing their information is important, they want to do it. But it's not always easy to get there. So, and then training our staff to use tools and be able to put it into action. M&S reduction example here, reducing our countywide Tableau instance. So we have transitioned to Power BI because it was already included in our Microsoft suite. And that saves us a lot of money and not running a duplicative tool like Tableau. And then technology infrastructure services. Cheryl Reedy is our, here you are, our infrastructure services manager. This, when you think of a technology department, is everything you would imagine, a data center and flash blinky lights and spinning disks and network, all of those, the backbone of what keeps our organization able to connect, work with the outside world and communicate. And they also are responsible for making sure we have disaster recovery options. Doran mentioned the generator today. That's a critical asset for keeping that data center operating, even a power outage. And that not only keeps us up, but also City of Eugene, 911 services, public safety. It's an extremely critical asset. We also get nervous on hot days with making sure our water is out there and cooling that data center. So a critical resource, 13 FTE here. We do have one FTE reduction in this division, which was an ARPA-funded position supporting capital improvement layer 1 team, which is responsible when we get new buildings for making sure there's network and wiring in place. But this position, we did have a retirement. We're able to take that reduction in a responsible way to balance the services. And then, I'm just going to move through my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. For materials and services reduction, an example of a redundancy, we were funding for an express fiber route to Microsoft for direct peering there for our cloud services. Link Oregon, that is who we use for internet. We were able to work with them. They provide a direct peering relationship through our existing contract. So like, hey, we don't need both of these. So that's an example of a significant M&S reduction we were able to make by partnering with our existing providers. Lane Interoperability Group. This is our trunked radio system. Mike Harmon oversees this system. This did not take any reductions. It is fully externally funded. But it is ultimately responsible to keep that system so that you can click a radio in Oak Ridge and your voice can be heard on the beaches of Florence. It provides, critical coverage for public safety, utilities, public works, a variety of different group members that support this. And new in the current year is a similar rural fire radio program. Our rural fire districts came together. They operate off a conventional set of towers, a conventional radio system out there, but it is many decades out of date, and they really want to modernize that. And so they have funded Stephanie Stevens, who oversees this program and works directly with Mike to work with them to modernize that. Again, no reductions here because it is funded through them. But there is a vision to help modernize and bring that towards our trunked system so that it can extend and benefit from that and give safety and thorough coverage to all those working out in the field. And so some really great work and opportunity going on there. And I would credit and thank Patience Winningham and Steve Adams and others that helped bring that all forward. Just quickly, our changes, we've talked about a few of these as we've gone through. With regard to that rural fire program, the fiscal agency is currently in our policy division. We're transitioning that into technology services just for bringing the unit together. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, we're doing some research and development of web-based desktops. Web-based desktops means basically virtual desktop or other ways of booting up and getting a full productivity experience without having to have these expensive laptops and desktop computers. The goal really, one of the goals of technology is we're moving more towards subscription and not owning things and moving away from hardware wherever possible. Just because better to spend your staff time doing things than maintaining hardware. Hardware is expensive and wasteful, so this is something we're focused on. And a reason this year we're going to take another look at our PC replacement program too. How's it working? We hear good things. There's a few points of question, so a good chance to review that program again and see how it works in the model that IT is moving to, which is really, again, subscription-based and not so much owning assets. And this is just another kind of a way of seeing those things. We're also getting close to integrating our Avaya phone system with our Microsoft Teams, so you can place and receive calls right from your Teams app and not have to use a phone. Also, let's see, I mentioned the PC replacement, so yeah, I think I covered most of these. Just a couple of quick challenges and opportunities to mention here. One is project management. We took a reduction in current year of project management, and the demand for that did not reduce, and so we're finding needs to recruit and hire extra help to fulfill those coming out of department direct budgets rather than just kind of being pre-planned. So we either need to adjust demand or keep that in mind as we look for other changes, like is that the most important thing? And it would not be an IT meeting if we did not at least say AI once, artificial intelligence. We all know generative AI is here. It is both a challenge and an opportunity. What did Alana call it? Chopportunities. Right, because it's both. AI is part of our lives now, want it or not. It's happening, and it's for us, it's lean into it, invest in training and looking. HR has actually been a tremendous partner in this because it is about people first, and so just thought I'd mention that. There are several others. You can dive in wherever you want to. I think that is it, and we are at the point where you can ask some questions.
Thank you so much, Director Finch. I will turn it to the committee for any questions. Commissioner.
In that last slide, there was a bullet point near the bottom that said a challenge with PC replacements. It went by pretty quickly, so I don't remember the entirety of the line, but it was basically alluding to some issues with process to replace those. Can you explain that just a little bit more so I know what you mean? Are there like processes that we've put in place that make it hard for you to replace them?
I can maybe tee this up a little, and if you have any details you can add too. I would say the focus is on, I guess I say, when staff come in to replace one PC, they can replace 10 or 15 PCs in the same period of time, along with their monitors and other things. The real efficiency, anytime, let's say you take your car into the shop or you do something with a service provider, right? There's the parts cost and there's the labor costs. The parts cost are always the cheapest part, the equipment. It's the labor costs that are always the expensive thing, right? So you don't want to put a cheap part in the middle of an engine that's going to cost a ton of labor to replace it. I hope that was a useful example. Same here, right? A team can come in and when they're doing replacements, if they projectize it, they can do them all at once and save time. And they've had some success with that. But there are some places where there's pushback, or not pushback, but more like it's disruptive to come in and change a lot, right? So it's really working and negotiating with departments to do that. And then some areas are really interested in managing those equipment costs in certain ways. And so it's kind of time and effort to kind of partner with them to see the benefits of that labor savings as they focus on the balances in their PC replacement. Did that cover it okay? Are there any other? Yeah. So it's just educating and getting buy-in to allow our teams to come in and do those in a larger project. Where they have adopted it, though, it's been universally positive feedback. I know the DA's office has expressed appreciation, E&T, HHS, others, so a lot of buy-in coming around on it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I have Vice Chair Means and then Commissioner Farr.
Mike, thank you for mentioning AI. I actually have a card here.
Yes.
It says AI policy ? As a means to mitigate potential customer service internal and external challenges. So that's something that I've been thinking about. I've actually been thinking a lot about AI in my other day job. Mostly from a workforce development perspective and how we're training our future workforce in these types of skills and that sort of thing. But all that to say, thanks for bringing it up. If there's more flavor that you can add there in terms of what you're looking at, but I think it's a critical piece of the puzzle, not to replace, but to enhance and mitigate for, particularly in a reduction situation.
I could not have said that better myself. This is about empowering and extending humans, right? It's a human story, after all. This is what we're here for, is people. And many of my peers out there, we're risk averse, right? We want to control risks, and there's a lot of effort to shut it off or keep it out. But here, really, again, it's happening, and the most important thing is to lean in now and train our people to understand how and that's where I'm saying HR has been a huge partner in this, in leaning in, putting trainings in LEAP, getting people connected. We have not blocked ChatGPT or other services. Rather, we really worked hard to educate people that this is how you can safely use this kind of a thing. And then we are really optimistic in hearing that Microsoft is providing us shortly, they've kind of missed their date, but what they call Copilot Chat, which is sort of ChatGPT, but it will work within our user accounts, and that will be protected. So instead of going to these free tools where whatever you put in there is exposed to the world, and if you're not careful, you could be in danger, this will allow us for the first time with I'm saying free, but included, tool that provides that enterprise protection, so we'll actually be able to turbocharge our efforts. We also have worked together to create a one-pager guidance for staff, so they do have guidance in their hands and a video that from our Chief Security Officer over here, Kim, that gives them some framework to use, and we have a policy in the works. It's kind of waiting for this approved secure tool, though, to really go into place that we can start saying, okay, now let's steer away from those free tools. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, and I'll just say, the state enterprise had a full task force that the governor initiated. And so there might be some learning opportunities there, collaborative opportunities, certainly as, our friends at the state level are looking at integrating AI into operations.
We have an IT association, the Oregon Association of Government IT Managers, get them, which I was proudly served on the board for the last 10 years. And we have membership from, many, if not most counties, cities, colleges, and state government. And we have several members that are sitting on that committee. Sabi is one of those. I don't know if you know Sabi. You know Sabi. And so we regularly stay in touch on that and bring that back to the conference as well and engage with that through that platform.
Great. Thank you. I think I saw Commissioner Farr's hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick things. First to you, Jill, the service desk. What would we do without it? And when you need it, you need it, and it's really remarkable. And it's I don't think there's anybody in this room who hasn't leaned upon you in that division. But the main thing I wanted to point out is something that you said. You said our most valuable resource is our people, and we share this resource as much as we can. And you mentioned Eugene and Springfield, but other counties also. And I don't know how much we in this room all understand how much our IT, your division, provides services to other areas. You're a leader, and people lean upon us for not just the innovation, but things that they simply couldn't afford to do without us. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but really, I hear about it continually, how Lane County and our IT department is providing services to how many other counties?
Yeah, several, and I would say, that is we are really lucky to be I wouldn't call it a tweener county, right? Like, we're not the biggest of the big, but we're not small. And so many of these counties run IT. And as you know, to be relevant in this world, you must run technology. But when you run technology, you take on a tremendous responsibility that so many are not aware of, because people like me come in the room and we talk in bits and bytes and boops, and you don't understand what we're saying. They look nice and friendly and they're kind of quirky, but really it's such a strategic component. Everything runs on technology now, but they don't have the resources and staff to keep up. Yet they're mandated, like all of us, you must provide virtually available meetings. But when you run that tech, it creates risks and it exposes them. And we responded, and I want to thank Steve and this board for having supported us and being able to be a responder to Curry County and go provide. And that only helped them, but that trained our staff on what went wrong there. And we have implemented so many security improvements as a result of that. It makes us stronger, and it helps our small counties and cities. And then, yes, providing those external services and capabilities where possible, it really makes a difference.
And we don't notice that in this room, but it's something that the people who you serve with that could not exist without it.
Yep.
And just finally, Kim Morgan, cybersecurity. Oh my goodness, what a tremendous responsibility that is. But my question was public records requests. You handle all public records requests?
So we work. I'm county counsel through the public record request system, and if there's electronic requests, like people need access to emails and those types of things, we gather them, do the quote, and then if the person wants to purchase them, or purchase the services, then we provide those to the county council, and then we just provide the back end tech pieces.
So there's that symbiotic, that relationship right there, and it's such a tremendous resource eater if it's not done,
And you don't want lawyers doing what they do.
Perfect.
Well, we're
So-
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's all my questions. I just want to say how much I personally appreciate it, because you also said, Mike, when people are when people know why the benefits of sharing their information, they want to do it. I'm one of those who does, well, this is my stuff. Why would I share it? And what you're all about is, you say the iCloud is our greatest, our greatest economy of scale. And sharing information with not just other counties, but with one another is, once again, I think that's a part of that economy of scale, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, ultimately, of course, people are our most valuable resource, but data is right up there. Right?
Yeah.
Data is a very, very important resource. And that's why we have Tina and her team here, because this county's invested and continues to invest in how critical that is, because it really helps us understand and make good decisions. Yeah. And and Tina as a leader has been a tremendous guide for our organization on understanding also the importance and the ethics and the critical nature of accessibility.
And you mentioned over 5 million in licenses and subscriptions. Can you help me figure out how many I'm double paying for?
Well, I mean, it is those things that were like Zoom and GoToMeeting and Teams and people all have their preferences. Zoom's the best, or it's like Apple. Of course, iPhone is the best, but then I'm just teasing. But Android users, but the key really is that if they do the same thing, it's just helping people train and understand how to use them and remove those duplications. But it is an ongoing thing because people add them for special needs, but then those needs change, and we don't come back and revisit unless someone's constantly looking.
Yeah, what a tremendous task that is. Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I just want to thank Director Finch and the entire team for the work that you're doing, and to our staff in the room today. I feel like the presentations had this common thread of people and the critical work that makes everything happen that's often unseen. So just really appreciate you all being here today. I will now turn it over for any final committee business.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Any committee business
I
to
don't
share?
think we have anything new for you. Just a reminder of the meeting on Tuesday here in this room, beginning at 1:45.
All right, with that, I believe our meeting is now adjourned at 4:19.
I'm sorry?